and all that. And they're saying that even if someone has a referral agreement through a real estate agent or a mortgage broker or what have you, they want to make sure that that's all documented and it all goes through them. Right? But someone just looking at that title, if they didn't read that article, they're like, oh my God, see, something's happening with syndicated mortgages, right? So, you have to read the story, kind of see looking at that. And in this case, it's good. The fact that, an organization like that would be opposed to having it, because looking at it as a competitor, is now saying we want to work with that competitor, with that competing product, right? So it's really, yeah, sorry.
You're speaking so much about the things which we are not able to understand.
Yeah.
The very fact is, what is syndicate mortgage, for example?
Okay,
But
so,
listen
yeah.
first.
Sure.
His question was how we can use RRSPs.
Yes.
There's nothing so far you have said about how we can use multiple time RRSP. That's what his basic question was.
Okay.
Because we learned so far
Yeah.
was RRSP can be used only once for the first home time buyer. That's it. And after that, you can't use your RRSP. You have to return back your money in the next 15 years.
Okay.
This is what we know.
He can sit down with you after if you have like specific questions.
This is not specific for everybody.
No, I can go
Because
through. That's no problem.
so far, I don't think so. Anything came on concrete out of it, because the basic thing is, what is syndicate mortgage? We are talking nothing so far. I don't know. And you know, sir, what is syndicate mortgage is?
Okay, well
He's
just
gonna
to
get more
answer
into
your
it.
question,
He's gonna get more
basically,
into it.
the reason why, I'll explain why. Right now, I just want to get you a general idea about cash flow, and that there are opportunities outside in different areas, both in the debt saving side as well as the money saving and growth side, to kind of implement that in the business. Now, if you want to talk about syndicated mortgage and learn about it, it's not a 2-minute conversation. That's going to be, it's very in-depth. I can give you a general idea if you want to understand.
Give us a general
I'll give
idea,
you
then
a
what we'll do, we'll have you back again to
Okay.
give more
More
broad
details.
explanation.
The main question
Just so he
today
can-
was RSP's thing, how
Okay.
we can use multiple time
I'll explain it
RSP.
on both sides. So basically, first off, I'll answer the RSP question first on the home buyer's plan. So the first time home buyer's plan on RSP is not really a first time homeowner's plan, okay? You can use it again and again as long as you and your spouse have not owned or lived in a house in the last 4 years. So for example, say if someone bought first time home buyer's plan, they used their RSP the first time, then they pay that back. After that, if for some reason they no longer own a home, they end up going to renting or something for 4 or 5 years. At that point, they can do it again. Now, if someone is living in a house and they own the house and they've always owned the house after they did it, then they cannot do it again, because you have to have that time frame of non-ownership of a home before you can qualify to use it again.
And some people do that within families. What they do is they trade names. So they put the house in their parents' name, brother's name,
Yeah,
sister's
anyone.
name, and they move. That's why you see a lot of different
They
trade
change the
names
title on the.
all the time, right? So if they decide to put money into an RSP the second time around, can they use that for the syndicated investment?
Oh, yeah, for syndicated mortgage, that's a separate question. So the
So
first
what's
one
their,
is about
what's
the
their
home buyer's plan.
options? You're right, so
Okay.
that's their first
Yeah,
option.
that's one.
Before we go,
Yeah.
can I ask one question?
Yes, go ahead.
I asked Mark that question last week also.
Yes.
Most of the times, when immigrants, they come to Canada, they bring money with them.
Yes.
So what happens, instead of going for renting, they take down payments, say 10%, 15%, and they buy a house.
Yes.
So now they already have a house. And after that 4 or 5 years, they have RRSP also. So if they want to buy another property, can they use RRSP as a down payment?
No, as long as they are registered owners of that house within that 4-year period, them or their spouse, and they're living in that house or that they own, they cannot.
No, I know that.
Yeah.
But the only thing is, as you said, somebody already used RRSP.
Yes.
Somebody already used
Yes.
RRSP. They are not owners for 4 years, like suppose they sell their house.
Yeah, then they go, yeah, then they can.
But in this case, they cannot.
Not if they're living
long
in
as
the
they are
own house.
owners.
Yeah, as long as they're owners, they cannot. So if they have that break of ownership for that period of time,
Yes.
then they can do it again, okay? Now, going back to the syndicated mortgage now. So syndicated mortgages, generally how, you can use it, it's an RSP, they can put it in that syndicated mortgage, okay? Now, you can use it on the real estate side, on the cash flow side with non-registered investments. So I'll go over both sides of things, okay? So if you have non-registered investments, you put money in there, you're getting the interest payment coming to you as income, monthly or quarterly or however that syndicated mortgage is set up. So, for example, in the case that I gave you the example with the family that moved to Brampton, they had their apartment was $165,000 when they sold it, and they had no mortgage on it. They had $230,000 in the bank. Out of it, half they put as a down payment, the other $115,000 they had. When they take those two amounts of cash money that they've got now, put it in a syndicate mortgage, every month they're now getting $1,700 a month as a mortgage payment to them. They're using that in their cash flow to reduce their costs that they have to put out, towards the house or whatever their expenses are. Now, on the RSP side, someone can have money and they want to put it to grow in the RSP. That is completely separate from the home buyer's plan in the RSP, okay? So what happens now is they're putting money, a lot of people already have existing RSPs, maybe 50, 60, 100,000 just there. And a lot of them may not be happy with the growth and the inconsistencies and whatever's happening on that side of things. So at that point, if they're aware and they learn about this opportunity, they're like, okay, well, if I can get a fixed rate of interest at this level, that's greater than what I'm getting elsewhere, with no management fees that my fund companies charge me, there's more certainty, and at the same time, they get protection where the market suddenly, tanks, they're still here. So, for example, you look at 2008, and you look at, when the markets crashed and people lost 30, 40% of their savings. The banks, like if you had a mortgage with the bank at a fixed rate, your mortgage payment and the interest rate to the bank didn't change, right? All of a sudden, if you lost your job and you got impacted by the markets, they could come and foreclose on your house. And you're on the street, they got their money, right? So it's like, how can a consumer get the similar type of protection? So, on a syndicated mortgage, the consumer is protected by the same rules that the banks are. It's the same mortgage rules that's there. But what you're doing is you're lending money now to commercial developers, right? So, there's already a ton of people out there that lend money on second mortgages to consumers all the time. But, there's an inherent risk there. Obviously you're entitled, but when you're dealing with a consumer, who would you rather deal with? Someone that has, 30, 40,000 income a year, or a developer that's built for 25 years that has deep pockets and you can see what they've done, right? So that's basically one of the differences there. But now the investor gets a fixed rate of return on the money that they've lent out as a mortgage, and at the same time, a lot of times, they're not just stuck in that fixed rate. They also have the ability of having some type of speculation, where a lot of the deals will have an end of term bonus based on the developer's profitability. So now it's not like, say if someone had a GIC, you go, I'm just stuck with his return. No, you have that, and you also have the potential over here as well. So it's the best of both worlds, and again, it's a lot higher than a GIC pays. So
let me ask you a question in this case. His question was that somebody bought a house, big down payment, came out from outside the country. So now they got all this money, they bought a house, and they want to sell it. So they sell that house. So now they got maybe $300,000 cash. So if it's a husband, wife, or whatever the case is, what if one of the people took a small portion, bought a house in their name, and the other person bought a syndicate mortgage and started having income, and they started to balance out the cash flow, like you said,
Yes.
for the same scenario?
yeah, then that would be fine, because at the end of the day, they're getting, now it wouldn't be through an RSP, because if they want to get the cash flow, then they'd want to have it non-registered, because if it's an RSP, then obviously they can't, the tax on it, right? So in that situation, like if you have people that have money, cash money coming in, if they want to buy the house, great, but instead of keeping the rest of it, under their mattress or whatever, have it do something for them and build that cash flow income, you know what I mean? So at the end of the day, if you can show that person, yes, you can buy this house, but on top of that, it's not going to cost you anything. And when I say not cost you anything, sure, they're using their money, but that money is the principal that's put in there. They're getting interest paid to them. That interest is being paid to them by somebody else. So they're basically using the theory of other people's money, right? So at the end of the day, if you can have the developer pay your expenses, and I have situations where people are even borrowing money and making money like that. Like I had a guy who just, I'm seeing him tonight. He had 150,000 equity in his house, right? And currently his mortgage standard payment is 900, but he's accelerating it and he's paying 1,200 a month. So all of a sudden now, if he utilizes that 150, even if he does a line of credit and on the house, say it's 4%, right? He's going to get 8% fixed from the syndicated mortgage. That amount is going to cover the cost of that 4%. He'll have the other 4% left over. And at the end of the day, it's $500 a month for him based on that amount that he'll actually get. So he can maintain his $1,200 accelerated payment to make sure his house is getting paid down, but only you have to use $700 of his own money. And then that other $500 is open to him. If he currently has a child that he's trying to do something on his RESP for, and he's like, hey, here's another $500 a month I can throw over there.
How much is the rate of the interest on the syndicate market?
It's 8%.
It's 8%.
It's 8% generally with most of them. They're pretty much all. I'm sure you've seen them all as well.
And who do it like?
Well, there's various different companies that do it, and that's where I'd say be careful who you're dealing with, because there are certain companies that don't have as good of a track record or don't have the quality of developers that they're working with. Now,
which is a good company.
well, one that I have selected to work with is the Fortress Real Capital. Fortress Real Capital. They're headed out of Richmond Hill. They've had a lot of top name developers with them, and their due diligence is top notch, and that's why I selected them. And just to give you an idea, I think I talked to you about it before, but last year they had analyzed, like they had developers coming to them for this, and there was 532 that had approached them, not individual developers, but individual projects, and they only chose 32 to work with. This year they've had over 300 that they've analyzed. They've only selected 5. Right? So basically, I mean, since March. And the reason why is, you know, developers need this now because prior to you know, the financial fiasco, the banks were lending them a lot more money, right? So when they pulled back and said, okay, we're going to reduce the amount we're lending you now, the developers, okay, we don't want to come up with this extra cash and reduce our developments from maybe 5 a year to 2 a year. We want to keep it the same. So at the end of the day, if we bridge that gap between the funds that they were using before and the funds that they're required now, then they're happy to do business with us and go that way. But you know, even with top developers, this company is very selective because they want to make sure that the metrics have to be in a certain way for it to work for them, for the investor, for everybody. So like, you know, right now they just got City Zen and Fernbrook, and there's 4 projects that are coming in from them. They're the ones that did the Absolute Towers in Mississauga. And then right now they're actually looking at, I mean, Tribute Homes is huge, and they actually gave them 6 deals to look at, and right now out of those 6 they're only basically liking 1 of them, even though it's a big developer like that, right? And currently they have 2 industry experts that they recently bought on at the beginning of the year. One it was the chief editor of Urban Nation, which is a publication that developers buy for statistical analysis on developments in different areas and things like that. And another gentleman, he was the vice president of MCAP, and he was responsible for commercial lending for, I believe, up to $2 billion. And now he looks at the bankability of the developer, the other one looks at the statistics of the area, and then they go from there. And they pick their projects in really good locations. So, you know, I'll give you a little example right now. There's one right now that we're funding. It's at the Vaughan-Toronto border. So it's by the 427 and Steeles. Okay, so it's on the Vaughan side of Steeles. So all of a sudden, right away, the people save on the land transfer tax, right? Secondly, being right on Steeles, they have full access to TDC, right? While having a Vaughan address, which people would assume, a lot of people assume as being more prestigious, right? So they have that Vaughan address, full access to the city. It's right around, the whole property surrounded by conservation lands. It's the only spot that, if you look at the map, that doesn't have that green in that little section but it's 15 acres. But behind that, there's a railroad track, and then there's the buffer for the 407. And then you got the 427, 27, 407, Steeles, everything is right there, right? So when people look at that kind of like a client, they're like, okay, well, what are the chances? And what they're building there, they're building townhouses. Right now, they find that the low-rise townhouse or, you know, that type of home is the premium, because people in that area, a lot of them can't afford a detached home. And then if they go to a condo, sometimes they find it's too small. So now they want to have a little bit of dirt, right? They want to have this house that, you know, is on par or very close to the condo prices, and they're getting more. And, you know, building that kind of level, you know, 3-4 stories is very cheap for a developer. They don't have to use concrete, right? So at the end of the day, it's a low cost, but also the high demand product in a really good area, right? And on top of that, like right now they have 4 projects, one in Richmond Hill, one in Georgetown, and one in Toronto, and I think one in Mississauga, that we own, the investors have put money in earlier this year. Other developers are currently they've put offers on this property with a premium to buy it now. So now they're like, well, look, let's look at this deal and say, hey, if we're gonna make more money building this, maybe we'll keep it. If we're gonna make money, if it makes more sense to sell it and move on to another project, we'll sell it, we'll give the investors their money back and give them a bonus on their money right now, and now they can roll it in and use this higher amount that they get to invest in another project, right? But I mean, the reason why that happens, a lot of times when people are building, they're building very close to other developers. And if one developer says, hey, look, I'm getting good sales in this and I want to, you know, build and continue in this area, and if you're in this area, they'll say, okay, let me buy your property and let me continue my development, right? So there are a lot of things out there right now, and like when you look at the actual way products are selected, I mean, you as real estate agents will understand better than anybody else why a certain project is better than the other. And you know,